I'm just wondering what's going to happen if anything happens in Iraq. And again, in a vibrating, in a riot Middle East. And Iraqis, with all respect for and maybe I think all of you know some kind of background about Iraqis. Iraqis either in total silence or on a complete riot again what's happening. And so now they are in a complete silence. But once they are going in a riot, believe me, they won't be satisfied with Tahrir Square. They will have really, really massive changes in everything. Let alone what the BP or BT or the oil experts are trying to have their contract signed. But I believe everything will be changed. But again, we have highly corrupted personnel in the political system in Iraq, and the same old story is happening again. When something happens in Iraq, these assets have been smuggled into international banks, and then they will be frozen again. And again, Iraqis will be deprived from these assets. So within the last two weeks or 3 weeks, I've been in calls with even tribal leaders, associates, tribesmen, and experts, and talking about that issue. So I came in with a conclusion that we need to come up with a mechanism, a really new mechanism to stop this. Maybe in case everything changes or something happens, and again, we need to activate. This is my personal suggestion. A UN mandate. There is, by the way, there is a UN mandate, but I don't know. Maybe the reports, Nina knows better than this, has been put on the shelves. So we need to activate an international mandate with international community to be part of resolving Iraqi problems, not being part of the problem itself. And they are really part of the problem itself. And what makes it very silly for me is that Japan has debts for Iraq, and they turned, I think, 55, I'm not quite sure of the number, 55 millions of their debts into the Iraqi fund, while Kuwait is still chasing their monies out of the Iraqi airlines, and they are frozen the assets and stopping Iraqi airlines from flying here and there. So we have really serious problems, and frozen assets would be part of resolving these problems. But there is a serious question: how we can, if we can return these assets, how we can return them? Is it okay to return them to a legitimate elected government, and then we are handing over the frozen assets that we've lost to a highly corrupted political system, and then Iraqis will lose again? Or should we think of a way that these assets, in case we, and of course I'm encouraging ROMMA Commission on behalf of myself and on behalf of people whom I've contacted in Iraq, to really cooperate on this issue, and then to have a mandate, to have a mechanism to encourage international community to invest these assets into development programs in Iraq, right development programs with Iraq in cooperation with Iraqi experts, independent Iraqi experts. And I think I have a chat with Philip a few days ago about this issue, and he asked me whether what the Iraqi government would say about that if we go to independent Iraqi experts and a committee of that. I would say, if I believe there is an Iraqi democracy and an elected government, I wouldn't have suggested such an issue. And if I may quote one of the most wonderful pieces in the history of literature, when Julius Caesar was stabbed and killed by Claudius, Mark Antony had a speech. He spoke with people of Rome with what's going on in Iraq, and believe me, there would be many, many Tahrir squares in Iraq if this continues. And go back to what Mrs. Or Miss, I don't know, Hall says. Yes, it's part of our human rights to know what's going on, to know our frozen assets, and international community should cooperate on that. Thank you very much for listening, and I end up with that.
Thank you, Omar. So we've heard from Libya, we've heard from Egypt, we've heard from Iraq. A lot of what can you say? Yeah, tragedies to say the least. But we need to understand what we're facing and deal with it. Now, without further ado, I've only got 2 remaining speakers for those who've been persevering. Firstly, we're going back to Africa because if you notice, you don't have to be a great genius. Some of these countries are in Africa, albeit north. And obviously Iraq's not, but a lot of them are or have been. And so it was interesting to invite Esther Stanford-Zosi, I hope I pronounced it correct, Kose, from the Pan-African Reparations Coalition, who's got something to say about this issue and has been campaigning in this building.
Must state our appreciation for being invited to present this case study at this most important event towards the establishing of the ROMMA Commission, and in this regard extend our gratitude to Global Vision 2000. I'm speaking here in my capacity of co-vice chair of PARCO, a position I have occupied since 2002. I'm also a representative of Voice of Africa Radio. I hope to introduce a Pan-African perspective to looking at the issues raised by the establishment of the ROMMA Commission. By way of introduction to our coalition, that is PARCO, PARCO is a coalition of African organisations and special interest groups who are in pursuit of a global strategy for Pan-African reparations for global justice, for crimes against humanity that continue to be perpetrated by the racist powers of white supremacy and their arsenals of European imperialism systematized into global apartheid against African peoples throughout Africa and the diaspora, from the period of chattel enslavement through colonialism to the contemporary era of neo-colonialism. We advocate for Pan-African reparations for crimes against humanity not only in the past, but also for the continuation of these crimes into the present, which negate our African people's inalienable human rights, particularly our sacred right to self-determination, in order to win a brighter future of total liberation, unity, and prosperity for ourselves in furtherance of global justice. PARCO sees Pan-African reparations in terms of action is mostly about making repairs, self-made repairs on ourselves, mental repairs, psychological repairs, cultural repairs, organizational repairs, social repairs, institutional repairs, technological repairs, economic repairs, political repairs, educational repairs, repairs of every type that we need in order to recreate and sustain our society. We are to follow the developments of the ROMMA Commission and even keener to make some interventions to ensure that the Commission can build on the best possible intelligence and factor in some of the key considerations that will be vital to the just implementation and success of such a Commission. Whilst we recognise the importance of repatriation of monies and assets, ultimately from African countries. For instance, in 1999, the then President of Nigeria, Olusegun Obasanjo, addressed the United Nations by calling for a World Convention on the repatriation of stolen funds. This was a proposal for an international convention for the repatriation of Africa's wealth, illicitly appropriated and kept abroad. Similarly, there is the 2001 Nyanga Declaration on the Recovery and Repatriation of the presence of on Arabized African Muslims. Except for the heavily Arabized northern fringe of the continent, it is evident that Africa is a long-ignored portion of Islamic civilization. And in working out ways forward, we must recognize how Islam has been shaped and is lived by indigenous African Muslims, as well as Muslims of other racial groups and ethnicities. African Muslims in Africa have not been passive recipients of Islam, but have shaped the religion and way of life from its inception, whenever and wherever it has been necessary, to harmonize with circumstances on the ground. So we in PARCO advocate for recognition and appreciation of this synthesis of indigenous African culture and Islam, as well as the harmonious coexistence between some African traditions and Islam. It is important at the same time, whilst we are cognizant of the contradictions that characterises the relationship between indigenous African cultures and Islam in Africa. In his 1964 treatise,
100 hours. Let me repeat that. There will be a special radio broadcast on Voice of Africa Radio. Repeat that again. www.voiceofafricaradio.com. And so some of the issues that we're talking about, we are going to ensure have a wider audience. And so thank you again for that. And your last comment and suggestion for a forum for dialogue is very practical. And finally, we've got half an hour, although by last but not least, is Mahtab Aziz. And Mahtab is a member of the PTI, the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf movement. That's the Pakistan Justice Party. We had invited its leader, Imran Khan, who you all probably know, to participate. Unfortunately, he was unable to do so, but Mahtab is very active, and I think it's relevant to widen this remit globally. I mean, global vision is global. We can't obviously cover every country here today, but
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I will present a brief overview of the situation in Pakistan. As you all know, the events that we've seen in the Middle East haven't occurred in Pakistan. The closest that Pakistan's come to that was when the lawyers' movement, in fact, did a campaign